Well, as the old phrase goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree when it comes to father-son. That is how many GOP senators or governors like to view Donald J. Trump. And certainly, he has made it much of a point, especially in his second term, to try to erase, remove, or just not even care and drive through all of the guardrails between the three branches of government. And sadly, along with the Supreme Court's help, he's been able to do quite a bit of that. They've ignored federal court orders, district court orders, Seventh Circuit court orders, and yet, in this breaking story, finally, thank goodness, one person in Trump's two favorite states, Texas and Florida, when it comes to migration and illegal immigration, someone finally said, well, that might be just enough. And I'll show you that story in just a few seconds. Let's take a look, however, real quick at two key things that have now happened with regards to Alligator Alcatraz. First, the money the state has put out without actually having proper guidelines. This
Alligator Alcatraz facility. Wink News right now following the funding. Wink Investigates reporter Olivia Jean is back in the studio now. Olivia, what did you find?
The Department of Homeland Security is calling what they're calling Alligator Alcatraz is going to cost $450 million per year to run. According to the Department of Homeland Security, per day, each one of these beds will cost around $245.
Wait, what? $245 a night? Are you trying to tell me that the folks who are being held in detention for being illegal are somehow staying at a nice hotel in Vegas?
And right now, Florida taxpayers are fronting that bill.
And in the true vein of Ron DeSantis really wanting to channel his inner Trump and be a dictator and dismiss and deny the Democratic people in that state from what they're lawfully allowed to do, this.
Leaders of the controversial Alligator Alcatraz Immigration Detention Center are pushing back against Democratic lawmakers who were denied access to the facility.
Members of the Florida's Division of Emergency Management say that they are not required to grant lawmakers access there.
State leaders say that the legal authority cited by Democratic lawmakers trying to enter Alligator Alcatraz doesn't apply to this specific facility.
Alligator Alcatraz, Florida's new immigration detention center, is now open and operating near the Everglades. Governor DeSantis re-emphasized the importance of the facility Monday.
What DHS would tell us is, look, we don't have the manpower and the capacity to just be processing and have someone in like a bed overnight or whatever before they can be deported. So they asked us for help on that.
Now the Division of Emergency Management is responding to claims by Democratic lawmakers who were denied access to the new facility. Pinellas County State Representative Michelle Rayner is among those who say by law, legislators are allowed to visit state correctional institutes at their pleasure.
But in this breaking story, thank goodness, finally, the Supreme Court actually did something intelligent and is stopping the next Ron, I want to be dictator DeSantis. Take a look at this story. Massively huge breaking news. Supreme Court hands Florida loss in bid to bar undocumented migrants. The Supreme Court dealt a blow to Florida Republicans on Wednesday by not allowing them to enforce a controversial law that effectively created a duplicative level of immigration enforcement to throw undocumented migrants out of the state. Breaking. Supreme Court denies Florida's emergency request to let it implement a law barring undocumented immigrants from entering the state, wrote legal observer Stephen Mazzi on X. In quotes, there is no written opinion and no noted dissents. American Immigration Council fellow and frequent Trump critic Aaron Reichlin-Melnick lauded the decision and said that it was yet another rebuke to GOP efforts to persecute immigrants at the state level. Huge, and also unquestionably the correct response, wrote Reichlin-Melnick. This comes soon after the Fifth Circuit itself also turned away a request by Texas to put SB 4, a similar law, into effect. The precedent cannot be more clear. States cannot carry out their own immigration enforcement regimes. Florida's law, which makes it a first-degree misdemeanor to enter the state as an unauthorized alien, already led to some arrests, including of a U.S. citizen, Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, who traveled into the state from Georgia. That particular case was cited by a federal judge earlier this year in blocking the law's enforcement. Florida had sought the Supreme Court's help to get that block thrown out. Initially, Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier signaled his intent to keep enforcing the law despite the federal court order, which led him to being found in contempt of court last month. I don't know whether to cheer, exhale, say thank God, or what. I can't get into the head of the Supreme Court and these 9 judges, especially, of course, the 6 that are clearly corrupt towards Trump in terms of a number of their decisions in the last, let's say, 12 months, but certainly the last 6. But thank goodness they have put a stop and a kibosh on a state being able to act as if they're their own federal government when it comes to federal things such as immigration and deportations. Not detainment, not due process, but literally being able to take people, throw them in there, and run them out without any form of due process. And thank goodness that SCOTUS actually saw fit to do this, because with ICE's budget going up, the amount of money to $450 million that it now is, 10 times what it was, if SCOTUS hadn't done this, every single state Trump would have turned into, without question, ICE martial law. For now, some of us can breathe a little easier in some of these states. But as always, stay frosty.